Edinburgh is chock-a-block and the sun is shining. The Fringe is back for its first full programme since 2019, hosting almost 50,000 performers across 3,000 acts, hailing from 58 countries.
The curtain rings down on Edinburgh's Festival of Art.
It all started in 1947 when 8 theatre groups arrived in the Scottish capital wanting to perform at the newly established Edinburgh International Festival. They were refused, but they put on their shows anyway at smaller so-called fringe venues around the city. The following year, the official international festival would wind down in the afternoon, making way for a more renegade experience for theatre goers in the evening. And thus, the Festival Fringe was truly established, sewing a new stitch in the cultural fabric of Britain. One of these year's 50,000 performers is Matt Forde, political satirist, comedian and podcast host.
Wait a minute.
Today's political landscape is rich pickings for comedians because, in his words, there are wallies everywhere. Half of them are running the country and the other half are trying to.
Matt Forde, unusually, I have to begin this interview with an apology because last week on Newsnight, I called you a Brexiteer.
You did.
Was that a big burn?
Not a big burn, it made me laugh. I had a lot of messages from people going, "You've just been outed as a Brexit comedian by Kirsty Wark." And I thought, what's gone on? And then I got sent the clip, and of course you'd wrongly I'd been mispoliticked. But I humbly accept your apology.
But where do you stand on the political comedy firmament?
Well, I'm a Remainer, but I wouldn't, I mean, in a Brexit term, I'm a Remainer. I would never define myself by that. In a way, Brexit feels like old news, I think.
It's so funny, though, because, you know, your show's Clowns to the left of me, Jokers to the right. Time Out call it, you know, the nearest thing to objective comedy. I mean, would you put that in a poster?
It doesn't sound, I'm not sure it sells it. I mean, I take it as a great compliment. I never understood why you would not poke fun at your own side as well, because they still make mistakes. There's still corruption, there's still incompetence, there's still jealousy, there's still rivalries that are really ripe for comedy.
But is there a kind of orthodoxy in comedy, and particularly in stand-up, about where a lot of the comedians lie? And it is more on that than it is on that.
Obviously, there are a few more openly conservative comedians now. I think there were always conservative voting comedians on the circuit. They just chose to do material about something else. I mean, every year, there's always a moment of tension. Even though I rip it out of everyone, for a period of time during the Corbyn years, I would get at least one walkout per show. This year, it's when I take the mick out of the SNP. That's the bit that some people can't stand. And it's never gratuitous. It's never nasty. A government that's been in power this long is right for satire, and it's only a small part of the show. But some people just expect you to only attack the Tories, and I think that's insane.
But do you think cancel culture has had an impact on comedy?
I think it's more that you have an exercised minority that exists around kind of all extremes that are keener and more vocal to actively be offended and to take a joke less. But I think the vast majority of people are totally fine.
You're into political satire with Spitting Image. You write it, you perform it.
Well, the British sat-nav system has had mixed success.
You've got Trump, you've got Boris, you have got Keir Starmer.
Yeah.
How's Keir Starmer in your head?
When we first started doing it, it was a fairly thin impression. And I remember him saying, I think the puppet looks all right, but I don't think the voice is quite there. You know, the Metropolitan Police. And I find that phrase really helps get you into Starmer. So I think the impression has come on a lot. And people, that's the impression that people enjoy more now in the show. I think people are tuning into him more and finding out what's funny about him.
At a time when the cost of living is in dire straits and when the war in Ukraine is ongoing and we hear dreadful stories every day, is it hard sometimes to feel the humour in any of that? For
me, I find the dark comedy in some of the appalling political reactions to it. I see people in the Labour Party blaming NATO for what's happening instead of Vladimir Putin. I see people blaming Joe Biden. Some of the misinformation that you've seen on left and right, and really that's at the core of my show, is the hard left and the hard right have become identical, really, and arguably they always were. It's not even just that they spread misinformation, it's the same lines on behalf of the Kremlin and other places that they peddle. I find that deeply disturbing. This is entirely Vladimir Putin's fault and no one else's. For anyone anywhere, let alone elected in our parliament, to suggest that NATO are somehow culpable, is darkly comic.
Lastly, when you wanted to have a recompense for my mistake,
Yes.
you asked for chips.
Yes.
You asked for a voucher for a well-known restaurant that we can't name. You asked for a football strip from Nottingham Forest
Yes.
Thirds, okay?
Yes.
Right, okay, but we're in Scotland. So I brought you Tunnock's caramel wafers.
That's one of my favourite chocolate bars. You know what? I spotted that in your bag earlier and was going to go, have you got a Tunnock's caramel? I was going to ask you if I could have one. Thank you, Kirsty Wark. Thank you, Newsnight.